Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Microsoft Flight Simulator, and today we are checking out SimUpdate 6. A lot of changes boasted in this one. Today we're going to try to check out a few of them, as many as we can. A lot of them are bug fixes, performance fixes, things that we really can't go over an entire video. But we're going to at least test it out. We're going to be flying from Chandler Municipal in the TBM 930 in Arizona over to Tucson, Arizona, and just have a little chat along the way. So without further delay, let's get started. If you are interested in acquiring any of my Overkills tutorial guides for Microsoft Flight Simulator, please consider joining me on Patreon. Patreon subscribers level tier 2 and above have access to all of my guides, as well as any future updates and future guides that will be coming down the road. Link to Patreon can be found in the description below. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started here. Now, a couple things right off the bat. One of the big things that was adjusted was actually this beautiful lady right here, the TBM 930. Rudder stability was reduced for more realistic yaw simulation, reduced excessive flap drag, turned flight idle state torque RPM, or tuned, flight idle and torque RPM and ITT, and fixed overspeed strip incorrect on standby airspeed indicator. So, couple little fixes, but there was a ton of fixes to multiple aircraft, so make sure you guys check this out. Let's go ahead and get our aircraft started. We're going to be talking about some graphics performance. We're going to be taking a look at FPS. The one thing that I will say that I've noticed right off the bat, and guys, I'm just going to get her started while I'm talking here, so feel free to sort of join around here. Well, actually here, let's walk through the checklist in case anyone's interested. So what I like to do, close the doors here. We're going to make sure the air conditioning system is turned off. All anti-ice and inertial separators set to off. Parking brake is set. Landing gear handle is down. Hot airflow should be at the floorboard for startup. Auto pressurization switch or pressurization switch is set to the off position. Fuel tank selector, left or right, typically the fullest tank. In our case, we're equally balanced today. Throttle is in the cutoff position. Alternate static air source right here is pushed in and closed. All circuit breakers are pushed in and locked. Coming up top here, we're going to make sure that our nav lights and pulse lights, strobe lights are all off. Taxi light and landing lights are off. Panel light as desired. Crash bar is up, ready for it to bring the batteries and the generator switches to on. Starter switch should be in the off position. Ignition switch should be set to off for pre-start. And auxiliary boost pumps to off as well. Fuel selector set to manual. And autopilot and trim systems are set to the off position. Emergency locator transmitter should be in the arm or off position by default. And finally, oxygen is set to off. Now, for engine start procedures, we're going to go ahead and take our battery and take it into the battery position. Generators up into the main position. Make sure the ignition is set to on. Auxiliary boost pump set to on. And I think we are ready to go. Let's go ahead and turn our nav lights on. Turn on our MFD for engine readouts. And let's give our starter switch a 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi count. Step on downstairs here. 1 too far forward here. Oh, where am I? There we go. Monitoring the NG, it's the middle gauge or third one down here. We're looking for 13%. Once we're in 13%, we're going to left click and hold. Move our throttle into the first position. That's going to be low idle. Clear that master caution. As soon as the RPMs and engine temperatures get to the right position, the remaining caution should alleviate. Actually, there is a bug that I'll bet still exists. Yep, it's the parking brake. So if you run into that, simply release the parking brake and hope she doesn't roll. Okay, we were looking for 53% on the NG. We obviously passed that, so we're left click and hold. Then while holding left click, right click tap. Takes our throttle back into the real position. Yep, that's what I was worried about. Let's go ahead and stop our aircraft here. That's what I was worried about. Again, that's a bug. The master caution will continue to sound anytime the parking brake is set. Okay, so hopefully that gets resolved at some point. It might be with the Mixed Mugs mod, honestly, or conflicting with another aircraft. There's just no telling at this time, but I'm not too concerned about it. Keep your foot on the brake. I mean, right now my feet are off the brake, so it's not critical. All right, let's set our barometric pressure. Make sure we get that up on deck here. Come back upstairs. And we're going to do a quick walkthrough. Ignition system should go to auto. Auxiliary boost pumps to the auto position. Fuel selectors into the auto position. Autopilot and trim systems are turned on. Oxygen, yes, is turned on at startup. That is according to the real world pilot's operational handbook for the TBM 930. Okay, stepping back downstairs, air conditioning system can now come on. Inertial separator will remain off for now, but we'll be sure to turn it on before taxi. Pressurization switch goes to max diff or auto. Auto is going to provide the most comfort for your passengers, while max diff changes the pressure as rapidly as possible. All right, other than that, I think we are all good to go and ready to continue on with the remainder of our flight. So let's go ahead and get moving with that. All right, so we're going to be doing a VFR flight here today. Nothing too fancy here. Again, we're here to check out the performance. So that brings us up to our next step here. Let's go ahead and turn on developer mode and get our FPS counter. All right, so now let's go to options and display FPS. All right, and we are using a third-party airport for Chandler Municipal. One of the things that I want to talk about real quick is if we go to our general options, one of the things they did was they made it possible to take our terrain level of detail, and actually let's just set this up to ultra. I knew that looked a little weird. I'm not sure why it reset itself. That's not where I had it previously. But you have the option now of taking this to 400. Now, let's see what this impact is. All right, so crushed our FPS. And if we step outside, honestly, I don't like it. I mean, it looks okay, but it looks very grainy. You can see the performance impact is significant. So, I mean, now, mind you, this is running with a 2080 Ti. So, I mean, I'm running last gen. I don't have the horsepower of like a 3080 or 3090. But let's try like a 300 and see what that gives us. A little bit better on the FPS, definitely smoother, and it does look pretty nice. But again, I notice there's a lot of grain out there that I'm not liking. I can see a lot of little dots and things like that, and I'm sure it's just the detail. It's just personally, like even looking down here. Oops, let's go downward. If you look at the ground, it just, I don't know how to describe it. Again, it looks almost like sandpaper is what we're looking at. And so I'm not really enjoying that too much, to be honest here. And I certainly prefer the FPS at that rate over the visual enhancement that it's bringing. You know, and I don't notice a ton of visual changes when I bring it down to 200. I do notice quite a bit of the sandpaper grainy look goes away. So I definitely prefer that. But let's go ahead and get the aircraft out of here. Let's get airborne and see what we run into. So we're going to turn the inertial separator on. We need that for taxi. Flaps will remain up until we hit the runway. Taxi light needs to come on. And I think that's it for our VFR flight. Nice and easy. Okay. So we'll just continue to monitor the FPS. A little stutter there. That was interesting. And it is a bit lower. Oh, there is two things actually I need to turn off. There are two things that I do not like. So I don't like the depth of field implementation. I don't like motion blur. And that's nothing against a simulator or Microsoft. I turn it off on every simulator that I own. I don't like the way it implements on a computer. I just don't. All right, let's go ahead and get taxiing out and get out of here. All right, let's go ahead and get rolling here. They still haven't fixed the issue with being able to use the mouse camera while inputting a control. That's super annoying. I really wish they'd fix that. Aircraft probably should have been facing the other direction based on how the taxiway looks. So right off the bat, like I said earlier, I've noticed that the sim is definitely loading faster. I didn't have near as long of a delay. I think the real improvement was the load time between world map and the cockpit. I noticed a major improvement there. I don't know if you guys have as well, but that was kind of a nice surprise for me. Although, from previous experience and previous numbers, my FPS is significantly lower than it used to be. So that I'm not happy with. That sucks. So up here we're in the 30s and 40s, where previous to this update I was up in the 50s pushing 60. So I'm not impressed with that at all. That's frustrating. I would say that we've definitely lost some performance in my opinion. And that's something that obviously now we're going to have to go back through our graphic settings and try to iron things back out. So that's kind of disappointing, but is what it is. We'll see what happens when we get airborne. Now, with that being said, again, this is a third-party airport. Okay, so it's an enhancement, so that could be having something to do with it. So we'll see what happens when we get back to Tucson. All right, pitot heat's come on now. We don't have to worry about any anti-ice. Landing light needs to come on, and strobe light comes on for the takeoff. Flaps set down to flaps 1 for takeoff. We're going to be looking for 95 knots, 90 knots on rotation. Dang it, and there's that stupid issue with the mouse. Alright, let's get onto the runway here. Line that heading bug. Alright, let's get rolling. Takeoff power set. Left rudder, left rudder. Looking for 90 knots. 90, rotating, positive rate, gear coming up. Flaps coming up. Now I will say, there seems to be a major improvement in the flight dynamics of the aircraft. The rocking and rolling that it's doing is quite nice. It's nice to see. Let's turn south. Now, even though we're down in the 40s for FPS, seems very smooth. Now, things I haven't checked for yet is I haven't checked to see if it turned on full screen optimization. Almost with every single update that we do with Microsoft Flight Simulator, that gets turned back on somehow. And by somehow, you know what I mean. We know who's turning it back on. Let's come on down for a second and go to our MFD flight plan, and we're going to add our destination. Okay. I think it's just KCHD if memory serves. Yep, groovy. Alright, the aircraft's flying like a dream, but then again, she always does. Now, what I don't like, if you guys see right away, we do have the latest version of the working title G3000 installed, and you guys can see what's going on here. The horizon line is broken. Looks like the pitch scale is broken. So luckily we have our standby ADI up there. And it also looks like, oh no, okay. Compass is working, or the CDI. So definitely some issues. Let's lock in that altitude. To Trigger the autopilot. Yaw damper, come on. Now we can go ahead and swing her into nav mode. And switch the CDI to the FMS. So it almost looks like we're pegged at 40. Like it wants to go faster. So we are limited by GPU. That's interesting. That's very interesting. So let's bring up the task manager here. And I want to see what the GPU's usage is. GPU utilization is only at about 83%. I don't know how well you guys can see that with it flickering. So we're definitely, it says that we're limited by the GPU, but I'm not buying it. But that is the way it goes. Alright, so talking about some other things that we're expecting to see with today's update. Like I said, there's a bunch of fixes to the aircraft. I'll bring that up here on the screen here. Tons of fixes to the various aircraft. Guys, feel free to pause if you see an aircraft that strikes your attention here. A lot of it's just cameras and things like that. Some adjustments to the longitude that I really want to check out. Well, actually, that might have came from working title, honestly. Avionics, a ton of fixes. Now, I wonder if how many of these fixes have now impacted the G3000, for example. They made some adjustments there. G3X, you know, now showing nav bearing. So I'm wondering if these are colliding with what we've got. But, and I'll be watching for the working title. Let's go ahead and check that out. I use the community download tool to manage these. It's a really awesome tool. G3000's up to date as of yesterday. So you guys can see that we do have the latest version of the G3000 installed according to their GitHub post. So unfortunately this bug could also be with the Mixmug's TBM 930. I don't know. I don't think so, because if memory serves, his mod is not messing with the G3000, but I'm not sure. But as far as overall sim performance, I mean, it's still very nice. I am a little concerned as to the FPS loss. I mean, that's almost 10 FPS. Going through the graphics options, let me make sure I'm not missing anything that I had changed before. All of this stuff was up on high before, or up on ultra. So yeah, no major changes to my graphics settings. So unfortunately, yeah, it really does look like we lost some FPS. But let's go ahead and get the aircraft over to Tucson, and then we will land it and see what that's like with this particular update. Alright, so a couple things that just popped up as I was reviewing the changelog again. Lights in blurred images, or blurry lights, excuse me, were fixed in 4K resolution, as well as 4K resolution was also optimized. Now, what they mean by optimized is a lot of things that were missing in 4K and not being truly generated in 4K were fixed, such as building generation and things like that. A lot of the buildings and surrounding terrain and areas were not truly rendered in 4K on 4K monitors. Which is probably why I was getting the FPS that I was getting before. With that being resolved, that's probably why I'm down into the 40s. Now, that doesn't still explain the fact that it's showing limited by GTU when I have 15% of headroom left yet. So, and I'm looking at it right now, and I'm still doing about between 80 and 85% on the FPS, or on the graphics card usage. So, there's still a little bit of headroom left, but I mean, 15%, well, yeah, that would probably actually give me about 10 frames. It's hard to say. It's hard to say. Well, let's see here. 40, you could call that 80%. Well, that'd give me about 5 or 6 frames. So it's hard to say what the issue there would be. Let's check out and see what our wind direction is. Wind direction is 270, which means we're going to be landing for runway 29 right. Although it's at 1 knot, so we could really land wherever we wanted if we wanted to land with the tailwind. Now, and with that being said, I will say the graphics down on the ground do look better than what I'm used to seeing. I mean, look at that. The building tiles, those look like AC units. Yeah, look at that. Vents, skylights. So I definitely will say there's a massive improvement in the way the buildings look for me compared to the way they did before. Holy sun. Okay, we'll keep it out the left window for now. But overall performance, I have multiple mods installed, guys. Terrain mods, scenery mods, aircraft mods. I have all of my payware stuff loaded in. You know what actually might be missing, though, is the Rex airport textures. But honestly, I think I'm actually okay with that because I kind of want to see where we're at given the way things are now. So, you know what? I'm actually going to spin things back up again. Let's increase our sim rate here. And there is Tucson right in front of us. If you guys have not had a chance to check out the Class Echo, please watch my video on that. I'll put a link to it down in the description below. I think you guys will really like this thing. I'm controlling the sim rate from it, and also, I wish I could show you guys right now. This FPS counter, I have a frame rate counter on the Class Echo, the little box, little display box. Again, check the link in the description if you don't know what the Class Echo is. You may really, really like it. Also shows my frame rate, so it's kind of awesome, actually. All right. So let's go ahead and reset our barometric pressure. We're looking at 3006. Whoop. There's the me kicking the rudders. Always a good thing to do, right? And we were at almost max power the whole time, guys, and yes, that was intentional. I'm not too concerned with engine performance, things like that today. I just want to see what the sim's doing. Okay, so there's the autopilot release. Yaw damper, let's get it turned off. It is flying very, very nicely, very smooth. No issues there. All right, we're going to be looking for about 3,000 feet here. She's definitely handling significantly different than what I'm used to. The trim is not near as responsive as it used to be, which is a good thing. I'm okay with that. It used to be way too sensitive. $130 knots, we can go flaps 1. Let's see what the drag looks like. They improved the drag. Reduced it by actually, is what technically they did, but improved the performance of the flaps to better match real-world aircraft. Looking for about 4,100 feet on the downwind. We are wide. That's okay. Yeah, it's taken a lot longer on that trim handle. Even using the keys to get her trim out, which I like. Again, that's going to offer better functionality as far as being able to fine-tune that trim. One of my biggest complaints about the simulator is how reactive the trim wheel was, and the trim handles and trim controls, however you want to say it, depending on the particular equipment that you are using, right? All right, let's go landing gear down. We're coming below 100 knots. Okay, she's down. We're going to be looking for 85 knots on the approach today. Initial separator remains on for landing. I don't even think we ever broke 10,000 feet, so light stayed on. Alright, there's that drag kicking in. Let's go full flaps coming left. Putting a little power back, continuing that descent down. So right off the bat, the first thing that I notice with the flaps down, and actually overall with the TBM, is I'm finding that holding my speeds is actually quite a bit easier. So let's look for 85 knots as targeted. Try to pitch for speed here, more or less. Oh, nope, now we're coming in too hot. If I flew it right, we should pop out right in line with our runway. We'll see. Little tight on the turn, but I almost had it. I've gotten pretty good with the landmarks, but I'm also high. Alright, let's pull some power off. We're almost full idle here. We're coming in super high right now, so... But you guys know me. What is it? Overkill space shuttle approach for you. Always. Alright, we're hot, man. It's because of how steep I'm having to lose this altitude. We'll let her float. We're just going to have to float it off. We're not going to stick our numbers. Definitely not. Not going to stick the numbers today. See if I can try this forward slip. See if we can dump some airspeed. Look at that. Still learning the forward slip. Now, what I don't like is at 70 knots, 77 knots, we could level out. So we should be able to use an 85 knot approach. I'm going to monitor to when we actually start losing altitude. There's 60 knots. Alright, so I think I would have to get maybe a professional's opinion on that. So the TBM's approach speed, according to the manual and what we got, is 85 knots. We're supposed to be looking for 85 knots on the approach. Now, yes, we all know I was nowhere freaking close. That was an absolutely terrible approach. I came in super hot. Okay, but that is also why I let it float down the runway to let it bleed off that airspeed, and then I was playing around with the forward slip, which the forward slip worked out well. I mean, if you guys saw, that airspeed dumped as soon as I put it into the forward slip. To the point where I actually had to add power back in. Well, at least I thought I did. We got all the way down to 70 knots. Level out the aircraft, she keeps flying straight. Get all the way down to 65 knots. She still wanted to fly straight. It wasn't until we came below 60 knots that we really started to lose it. And I don't know how realistic that's going to be. So I'm worried that some of the flight model changes may have negatively impacted either the performance mod that I'm using from Mixmugs or just the overall aircraft performance, and maybe things have to be tweaked. As with any other updates that we have, obviously there's always going to be issues. So let's talk about some real brief troubleshooting issues that you guys may be having, and I want you guys to try in case you run into them. Okay, so a couple of troubleshooting steps, guys, is to make sure, A, that not only do you remove all of the contents from your community folder if you're having issues, bugs, crashes, things like that, make sure you back up your anything in community folder and then delete the community folder. Make Microsoft Flight Simulator recreate that directory. It will do so, okay? Don't worry about losing all the contents or, breaking the sim by removing the community folder, okay? As long as it is the packages/community folder, you should be fine. Okay, you are welcome to delete that directory. Okay, when you restart the simulator, it will recreate it. Okay, there are such things as, basically think of it as trash that gets left behind when you delete or when you go into a folder and delete content. So sometimes you have to delete the entire directory. Okay. For those of you who want to look it up, full screen optimization. Okay, this is something that you have to find in the properties of the Microsoft Flight Simulator.exe. I have caught a ton of flack for people who, quite frankly, did this incorrectly and broke their Windows machine, so I will not be displaying it again. If you want to learn how to do that, you can check out any of my old performance videos. It's still there. They're still up. I'm not taking them down, but I'm not showing them anymore because people are blaming me for doing things, quite frankly, that they obviously didn't know what they were doing. So it is in the app data folder. You do need to be careful, guys. Anytime you're messing with app data, local cache, or the local low, or roaming folders, or app data, you need to be careful what you're doing. If you have any uncertainty about what you're doing and messing with program file permissions, don't do this step. If you are comfortable with it, or you're one of those people who just says, F it, if things go south, I can always rebuild it, whatever, fine. But disabling full screen optimization is a big one. I have yet to see a program that actually effectively uses it. It is Windows' attempt at optimizing a full screen application such as Microsoft Flight Simulator, any other game you may be running, things like that. It's supposed to optimize it. 9 times out of 10, it makes things significantly worse. The other thing that I will remind you guys is accelerated. I always forget what the freaking name of it is, so give me just a second. If we go to our game mode settings, okay, and see, for example, game mode is turned on for me, you may try turning this off. Okay, if you turn this off, you may find your frame rate improves. But if we go into graphics settings and you have an Nvidia graphics card, you should see hardware accelerated GPU scheduling. Now right now I have mine turned on. There are plenty of times where in the past, though, in previous updates, and I will still be checking this to see what happens, but I've had to disable this to get my performance back. It seems to be about every other update or so, hardware accelerated GPU scheduling must be disabled for me. So those are just a few things to try if you guys are running into issues. The other thing, if you're having trouble updating, I know that's another big one that keeps coming up. Helps if I can spell correctly. Make sure you log into your store first. Okay, simulator should be closed at this time that you do this. Come up here, go into downloads and updates. Okay, and then grab any updates. Microsoft Flight Simulator, as you can see, was updated last night. And any of your Xbox services should be updated. Speaking of the Xbox, hit your start menu, type the word Xbox. And we're just waiting for mine to launch. Give me a second. This is another app that must be installed. Both of these, the store and the Xbox application, they must be installed. They must be active. They cannot be disabled. If either one of these is disabled, you will not be able to update your Microsoft Flight Simulator. It will fail. Okay, if you're getting an authentication issue, chances are it's one of these two could be disabled or you're not logged into it. Okay, so those are a couple things to try if you guys are still struggling with getting the update to download. If you are receiving loss of connection, okay, the connection error that was experiencing last night, a bunch of people were trying to pop out all these fixes and things like that. I think those people just got lucky, deleting Navigraph and things like that. The loss of connection issues that were happening as of yesterday, that's server side, okay? That's not going to be your computer, okay? That is, you are being disconnected from the download server. Okay, so I think that some of these people who had successes doing some of these other weird things, it may have been placebo, maybe not, but that's where I'm willing to put most of my weight, and trust me, I've got a little bit to spare. Anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I hope you found it useful. Again, I know that I wasn't going to go through every single part of the update, but I wanted you guys to get my general consensus on the update. I think all in all, it's been a pretty good update. I think the performance is still definitely within reason, and this impact I'm actually okay with, and we'll have to watch for a later video when I redo my graphics settings to see if that is the reason why. If that is truly the reason why I have quote-unquote lost my FPS, I'm just going to park it anywhere here. If that is the reason why I've lost my FPS, then I don't have a problem with that. If it is simply that the world is now rendering in completion in 4K, I would absolutely expect to take a hit. Okay, so that's a good thing. I won't complain about that. I have no problem with that. Anyway, let me know what you guys' experience is so far with SimUpdate 6 down in the description below or the comments below. If you have any questions, by all means, feel free to leave those as well. I will be watching this one very, very closely, and we'll be doing a follow-up for any issues that I might be able to help with. Until next time, guys, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you in the next one.